Hey friends, it's Michele Lemereau and welcome back. Today we're diving into the science of goal setting. And for those of you, including myself, who've all been taught SMART goals, today's guest says that that is not the approach that you need and that there's a proven system that we can all use. Joining us today is one of the world's leading experts on the science behind successful goal setting and the use of good grit. Caroline Adams Miller is on the show. She is the author of a new book called Big Goals, The Science of Setting Them, Achieving Them, and Creating Your Best Life. Caroline is a Harvard graduate with a master's in applied positive psychology from the University of Pennsylvania and is a leading expert on the science of successful goal setting and its connection to happiness. We all have goals that we want to achieve, and having the right framework is essential. So I'm excited to share today's conversation with you. Before diving in, remember that if you've yet to join my newsletter, you can do that right now on your podcast player. And be sure to share this episode with a friend. One of the themes that comes up in today's conversation that Caroline and I are both aligned with is this idea of bringing women along and being a true champion of other women and supporting their dreams and their goals. This is a really empowering conversation, so let's dive right in. Here we go. Caroline, I'm so excited to dive into your book today called Big Goals, The Science of Setting Them, Achieving Them, and Creating Your Best Life. We're going to talk about goal setting for women specifically today,
Yes.
But why did you decide to write this book now, and who do you hope it will impact?
Well, I hope it'll impact a lot of people, but in particular, I think women and people from disadvantaged cultures and marginalized cultures will learn a lot from this because goal setting has typically, and I didn't realize the extent to which it is like this, but it has typically favored mostly the people who've had power for the last multi-hundred years, and it tends to be white men. And so as I got my arms around it, I thought, oh my gosh, this is a bigger topic than I even thought it was. And so I want everyone to understand goal setting theory. It's time that the world had the science of goal setting. And I got this offer and I jumped on it. And 4 months later, after sleeping on the floor of my office a number of times, here's the book. Yeah.
Wow. Well, wow. You did that quickly because it's so comprehensive. I loved it. As somebody who has deep curiosity, you bring up so many examples and stories. And I found myself going, oh, I never heard of that female billionaire. How have I never heard her name? And so I would be Googling and learning and the history that you talked about and all these women from like the early 1900s who were changing the landscape. And we've never heard their names. But you've brought them into this book, and I loved that.
Yes, those two women, Mary Parker Follett and Lillian Gilbreth, their voices, especially Mary Parker Follett, well, they've been mansplained out of history and productivity. Mary Parker Follett even more than Lillian Gilbreth, who's actually better known for Cheaper by the Dozen by many people because one of her 12 children wrote the book Cheaper by the Dozen about the productivity experiments. But these women had ideas about productivity and well-being in the workplace and well-being in life that are what we're seeking now, talking about now, positive psychology. I'm like, 100 years ago, these two women tried to make a difference in the world of goal setting and productivity and well-being, and it wasn't their time. And I wanted to bring them to life and give them the credit that they deserve. And goal setting theory has never been sexified. And yet everyone sets goals. I've never seen a theory that is less known by more people than goal setting theory. And it has been ranked number one of 73 management theories. And it's never had a replication crisis. This is the theory that everyone should know that no one knows.
Absolutely. Well, you write in the book The scales about my lack of real knowledge around goals fell from my eyes in October 2005 when my homework in the Masters of Applied Positive Psychology program at the University of Pennsylvania included a research paper by Edwin Locke and Gary Latham, co founders of goal setting theory. I remember saying out loud in wonderment, there's such a thing as goal setting theory introduction that's based on research. There's a real science to achieving goals that I've never heard of or been taught. And when you were teaching students, you would ask them, and nobody knew about it. And I will tell you, I had never heard of it until I read your book. And yes, I got certified as an empowerment coach in New York City 20 years ago. They taught us
Yeah.
SMART goals, like as you
Oh
mentioned.
my gosh.
I know. So let's dive into this. Tell us more about these gentlemen, the
I
goal setting
just,
theory, and also why you're trying to move people away from SMART goals.
okay. So I went back to school at midlife. I got into the first class of 32 people at the University of Pennsylvania, the Masters of Applied Positive Psychology program, the science of happiness. And so that was the fall of 2005. And in October, as you said, this research paper came, and I was a certified coach, credentialed. I thought I thought I knew goal setting. My great uncle set world records in the Olympics in 1912. All I ever grew up with was success and competition and goal setting. I was known for goal setting. I owned all those books. Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, Stephen Covey, Tony Robbins, had them all. By the way, all men. Can I just all men? And I goal setting theory. I went over to Drexel Library. I Xeroxed 500 a 500-page textbook. So that was when I realized there was a science to goal setting that had nothing to do with what everyone thought was science, and that's SMART goals. Law of attraction, we all know, isn't science, but people pretend it is because it's such a kind of an easy way to think about getting what you want without effort. But that goes along with the everyone's a winner mindset, which, thankfully has been killed off, I hope. And so I was known for goal setting, and I'd come into the public's eye in 87, 88 for becoming the first person who overcame bulimia and wrote an autobiography about it. That big goal, accomplishing that big goal when no one thought you could overcome bulimia, is what put me out in the world with my autobiography. My name is Caroline. People were coming to me for help. Oh, you accomplished that huge thing that we all thought was impossible because there was no cure. And so I got certified as a coach, and I started working with business people and lawyers and executives and doctors and all that, because everyone's curious about how to do hard things, everybody. And so I have owned all these goal setting books. And then I go to Penn. It's like, are you kidding me? I don't know a thing about goal setting. So I've been obsessed with Locke and Latham, Edwin Locke, Gary Latham, two scholars who joined forces, I want to say in the 70s or 80s. Locke is older. He was doing a lot of work before this and he came up with the idea that the best goals are challenging and specific, particularly if it's a specific outcome you're looking for and you already know how to do the goal. He joined forces with Gary Latham, who's at the University of Toronto, and they never sought out public platforms or podcasts or best-selling mass market books, none of that. These two men have done rigorous scholarship in real-world settings, and it's an open theory, and they announced their theory in 1990. Goal-setting theory says, and it's elegant and simple, there's, goal-setting theory is there are two kinds of goals, a learning goal and a performance goal. A learning goal is something you've never done before, the world's never done it before. And performance goal is something you've done before, say a pilot, a surgeon, doing what you've done before. And you have to set different kinds of deadlines and have different learning baked in. So I'll get into that later when we talk about something I call goals gone wild or goals run amok, is when you mix it up. But I was working with people all over the world at that point, and they all set goals. Many of them were entrepreneurs who had used goals to start their companies. And I found, to my tremendous shock, that no one had ever heard of goal setting theory. And usually they would just quote SMART goals, OKRs and KPIs, whatever. But there was never any mention of goal setting. So my capstone at Penn, which was on goal setting theory, became this bestseller, Creating Your Best Life. Came out in 2008, and it was the first to bring to the mass market goal setting theory. I thought, I've done my job. I've gotten it out there. 15 years later, It's still not known. And I think we're in a crisis situation right now because post COVID, we're in a mass learning goal condition. Everyone who did anything one way 5, 10 years ago, you got to learn a new way to do it now. So you must learn goal setting theory. So that's just a big piece of it. And I also think as a mother, my concern has been my 3 adult children have all lost friends to suicide. And I never lost a friend to suicide, nor did my husband. And part of what I observed when I was writing the book, Getting Grit, which was my 7th book, was this generation that was raised on unlimited praise. You're brilliant. You're great. You're a great artist. Make you happy at all costs by telling you that you're a winner. Take away valedictorians. Don't time these running races. Comfort animals for all. What we saw was it created not hard workers, not high confidence. It created young adults who were more narcissistic and sociopathic because they thought they were great for doing nothing than before. And so what I observed as my children grew up is they all had big dreams, but we took away the structure and the ability to build grit. And we've never taught anyone how to accomplish goals with science, but we've given everybody the belief that if you have a dream, you can accomplish it. We deserve better. The world deserves better. Our children deserve better. And if we're going to make the world that we dream about with all of these great initiatives that are out there, we've got to have the benefit of Locke and Latham's goal setting theory at the base of what we do. Now, I added my bridge methodology. We'll get to that, but it starts with Locke and Latham, and it's time those two men got their due and everybody knew who they were and what they came up with.
Yeah, you use the word renaissance in your book.
Yes.
And
yes.
I love that. The word that came to my mind was revolutionary, even though this has been around. There's an opportunity now to do things differently. And, you had said this idea of like everyone gets a trophy, everyone's a winner. In the book, I just want to kind of touch upon what you just mentioned, because it's not, it's, I think, yes, we've gone the wrong way with the kids. It's true. It's like, what's wrong with earning or achieving or getting that sense of satisfaction with the grit and the hard work and doing that thing, but we're not teaching the children how to do that and to be resilient. And so we are literally setting them up to fail. So I hope your book gets into the school systems as well as part of a curriculum, because I think everybody wants this. My audience is midlife women. We want this, but we also want it for our children, like you said. And you dedicated the book to your grandson. I love that.
I just thought Christmas.
Yeah, I loved it. I wrote this. I wrote, to my grandson, Wally Miller, may you and all your future grandchildren of mine be blessed with the strength of bold vision, the courage to test your limits, and the willingness to help make other people's dreams come true. Never forget that you can't keep what you don't give away. So let's stay here for a second, because this is bringing some emotion to you, because I think women are the ones that, gosh, if there's any problem, just like get a group of moms together. I swear we'll solve everything like 2 weeks. Done.
Yeah.
Don't you think? Come on, Caroline. Really?
I do. I think when women come together for the right reasons and they have each other's backs, we're unstoppable. And I think history is full of examples of women coming together to change social mores. Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. I mean, I could go on and on about the ways in which women come together to have each other's backs or to have the world's backs. One of my books was about how women don't always support each other's goals, and we can touch upon that later, and the ways in which I think there's a hidden hand when a woman is too agentic and too goal-oriented and too ambitious. The world cuts her down, including other women. But I think that as women, we owe it to our children as mothers to make sure that we don't rob them of an opportunity to fail from time to time, to do hard things, to go out of their comfort zones, and to feel what it's like to come up a little bit short. There's something called the psychology of the near miss, where we get close to something, but we don't achieve it. That actually makes a lot of people, if not most, redouble their efforts and try a little bit harder. But if we move the goalpost so far out that there's no real triumph in doing hard things, then we're not really teaching them how to be in the world. And one thing I did share in this book is one of my mentors is Marty Seligman, father of positive psychology. And everyone seems to know about learned helplessness. It's not a week that goes by that people don't quote to me, oh, I had learned helplessness about that, or someone else had learned helplessness. That theory was overturned. And most people don't know that either, because what Marty now says, and I've heard it directly from his mouth to me, is that we are born helpless. Our job is to learn to be masterful, to learn how to be in environments and overcome obstacles. So when that is the task we're born with, to learn how to become masterful and autonomous, connect with other people, but to be in charge of our own lives, and we remain helpless, we're not really becoming fully fledged, autonomous human beings. That's not a life to be proud of. And I want to say one other thing about doing hard things. When I was at Penn and researching Creating Your Best Life, I ran into this research, and I think it was by Jessica Tracy at University of British Columbia. Whenever I can quote the researcher, I will, because I think they deserve a lot of credit. I just apply research to the work I do. And she found that at the end of the day, we all scan our days subconsciously, if not consciously as well, for the things we did that we're proud of. And it's invariably the things we did that were hard, outside of our comfort zone, that weren't fun, that actually gave us pride. You can't chant your way or law of attract your way to confidence. There's no shortcut to becoming proud of yourself and confident, except by doing hard things in search of meaningful goals, things that match our values. And I just can't say enough about that. We must do hard things. There's one more thing I want to say. Gary Latham was telling me one day that they couldn't figure out why the people who were doing a lot of easy goals, mediocre goals, were happier as they were doing them, because their finding was incontrovertible, which is the best results always come from doing challenging and specific things, hard goals outside of our comfort zone. And that's when people really know what joy is like. He said, what we figured out is those challenging and specific goals. That's what the world values. We may have delayed gratification and happiness, but you know what? At the end of that long journey where we've tasted failure and discovered what we're made of and discovered who has our back, that's when we find joy. We're not going to have all these quick fixes along the way. And that's so interesting to me. So our job is to do this and role model it also for our children.
Yes, I've loved everything you said. And I actually want to come back because it did bring tears to your eyes when I was reading your dedication to your grandson. Tell me about the tears. And tell me about, because it hit something. I'm just curious what that is, because it's probably relatable. And then also you mentioned this, somebody had said this to you in the book, and this is the dedication. Never forget that you can't keep what you don't give away. Tell us what that means. So,
okay, thank you.
Yes.
I don't know why I got so emotional, except that I'm just so proud of my children who have done really hard things to get to the point where they've all found their soulmates. And my youngest son, Baird, and his wife, Lily, who are the parents of Wally, things haven't come easily to them as they have to anybody. They've all had setbacks. And here they have this beautiful child who's so open to the wonder of the world. And I look at him and I think, I want him to learn these things about continuing to create joy in the right ways by having big, bold dreams and finding out that he can do those things. And then I hope I have many other grandchildren. But there was something about that really moved me, and I wasn't prepared for that emotion. I think just because I want us to do better by our children, and change is slow. As I referenced earlier with these two forgotten women, Mary Parker Follett and Lillian Gilbreth, it shouldn't take 100 years for us to be having a conversation about how to do hard things and enjoy the satisfaction. In Chinese, there's a word shiku, which means, eating bitter. So eat bitter in the beginning so that at the end of the season, when the fruit is ripened, you get the sweet fruit. So I'd like us all to understand that. So I'll go to, you can't keep what you don't give away. So I did overcome bulimia 40 years ago at a time when it was really a death sentence. And I knew plenty of other competitive swimmers and people I'd gone to school with who were all struggling with bulimia, mostly bulimia, some anorexia. but nobody knew how to get better. And I remember I was lucky enough in Baltimore to meet a few recovered bulimics who were ahead of me. And I was, fell into this 12-step group, and I got better one day at a time, one week at a time, one month at a time. And I was feeling very just proud of myself. Somebody, probably a sponsor, said to me one day, well, it's great, Caroline, that you're getting better. That's great, but you can't keep what you don't give away. And in that sentence, she gave me the key to joy. And that's the mantra by which I live my life, which is every day I try to give somebody, if not more than one person, the hope that they can do hard things and the tools to do those hard things. Because if I don't turn around and pull somebody along as a client, as a friend, as an acquaintance, whatever it is, through my books, then I can't keep it, because, it's a contagion that spreads when you have the grace to tell people what you fought against, how you won, and how you hope they're going to win something hard too. And that's where it came from.
So beautiful. You do talk about grit in your book, and you specifically talk about good grit. So how do you define good grit, and how do we cultivate that?
I was more interested in what can you cultivate in order to have this good grit, this quality of doing hard things outside of your comfort zone, taking risks, to live your best life. And then I added this piece to good grit that I think really is important. This is where I deviate a little bit from Angela Duckworth. I do believe that grit, the greatest service of grit, is when it awes and inspires other people without giving a speech or, telling them what to do, but just by virtue of being that person who does a little bit more, a little bit harder, whether you're starting a food pantry in an inner city school for kids who don't have breakfast, but you're pulling together the funding and the time and whatever, that's grit too. But I was interested in the fact that if you do those hard things, other people watching you will be awed and inspired to ask themselves, what if I lived that way? What if I dreamt a little bit bigger and went for the stars, whether I was going to achieve it or not? What if I lived that way? That's what I think good grit is. I think there's bad grit too. We don't talk enough about things like what I call stupid grit, where it's like summit fever in mountaineering, and you get locked on a goal or an approach to a goal, and you don't listen to other people's advice. You don't even seek it. So it's like you're dead set on doing something the way you want to do it, and you can hurt yourself or others in the process. And then there's fake grit or faux grit, which is also kind of interesting, because I think we live in a society where people are making things up all the time now. And so you want people to admire you. So you'll make up your PhD research, or, you'll lie about having the Medal of Honor, which is so amazing to me that somebody would appropriate our country's highest honor for military service and buy a medal on eBay and put it on your resume, and then go in a parade and wave at people like you won the Medal of Honor. I mean, this epidemic of fake faux grit is just beyond me. And then there's selfie grit, where you do hard things, but my God, you tell everyone what you did at Orange Theory or whatever it is. But that's not something that compels people to want to do hard things. That repels people. So good grit invites people to ask themselves, what if I did a little bit more, a little bit harder, dreamt a little bit bigger? So that's good grit. How do you cultivate it? Well, one of the key ingredients that I found, and I did decide I wanted to write a book because I felt from looking at my recovery from bulimia that I cultivated grit in my 20s to overcome bulimia. It was truly the hardest thing I've ever done, if not the hardest. I just think it's the thing I'm proudest of, because it required so much of me mentally, physically, emotionally, the humility to ask people how to eat. I didn't know how to go to a restaurant and order food. I didn't know what a portion was. It was, anyway. So after I got around the fact that I developed grit in my 20s, that means a lot of people can cultivate grit, if not most people, if they develop humility, intellectual humility and social humility. You don't know it all, and you're going to ask people for help. So that's one thing. Another is just patience, the ability to wait for rewards, delayed gratification. You can cultivate that too. You also need to set goals. You have to have this dream, this hope that you can do hard things. And we get into Carol Dweck's fixed and growth mindset in that. But those are just some of the ways that you cultivate grit. And then you persevere. You learn to stick it out, whether it means getting on a treadmill and putting up 45 minutes on and not getting off at 43. You've got to learn to be a finisher and to have a mindset, like I said earlier, a channel you turn to when you want to be a quitter. And you find ways not to be a quitter as long as it's the right goal for you and you're not, using stupid grit. So those are some of the ways you cultivate grit. And if, the book Getting Grit, it's in audio now. You can learn more about that there, but that's good grit.
And that's good. And that's the good grit. And yes, I do think everyone can cultivate it. I just think that, and maybe it's because there were examples in your family. Yeah. So it's passed down. You wrote about in the book, seeing models of what's possible allows you to see that possibility within yourself. So that, that all makes sense to me. And I don't think it necessarily comes easier to some people. I just think that some people do have some more innate drive. And so go ahead,
maybe
please.
Passion. Maybe there's passion. There's a passion scale that you can take, but I think everyone has the capacity to have passion. It starts with interest. You just you can't just date every idea you have. You've got to have some interest in something, and you have to go a little bit deeper. Like you don't become a piano virtuoso without doing a lot of scales. Usually when you're young and you're kicking the piano like I did, it's like, I don't want to sit here. I don't want to practice, but that's how you develop passion. You sit through the early misery. So I think we all have a capacity for passion. But I do think you have to have this quality of self-efficacy. And that's Albert Bandura's work from Stanford. And there are 4 ways to build self-efficacy, which the shorthand is like the I can do it muscle. I've never done something like this before, but I'll figure it out. I'll find a book. I'll watch a YouTube. I'll do something. But he found there are 4 ways to build it. And one of the ways that I think I saw in my environment in the DC, Maryland area, there are more Olympians who come from where I live than most countries. Wow. So everybody, I know, Katie Ledecky lives around the corner from me. I mean, are you kidding me? I watched this little girl set these big goals for herself when she was 7 and 8. And, people have somebody in their class, somebody's parent is a world record holder. It's the area where I live. So I think there's a little bit of like role modeling that you see around you. It's called a proximal other. Then what if someone believes in you? I can't tell you the power of telling somebody you believe in them. As long as you're not blowing smoke up there, what, as long as you're anchoring in, I believe in you because I saw this, I saw how you persisted. And then the biggest way to build it is to break big goals into sub goals and to have little mastery experiences along the way. So just stop there. So those are some of the ways that you can build it.
I think this is so good. And so for midlife women, how can they use your goal setting framework to create outcomes when they're feeling stuck? Or, they talk about midlife reinvention. I don't know if I like the word reinvention. I just think it's more of like you're waking up to possibility. You're not necessarily becoming something different. You're actually becoming more of yourself. That's how I see it. But I'd love your thoughts. And where does she begin? Where does someone listening begin?
Well, she should get this book and read about a bunch of the things in it that I dug up for the first time. I did not realize the extent to which women are disadvantaged by typical goal-setting processes. But let me get back to that in a moment. So a couple of years ago, it became obvious that women at midlife were suffering in ways previous generations of women hadn't suffered, and it was called diseases of despair. And women were dying at midlife earlier because of eating disorders, suicide, depression, opioid, et cetera, et cetera. And I think for a lot of women, there's been a lack of purpose, a lack of knowing what's theirs and what they deserve to go after. And so this is aligned with some kind of scary, sad research on the fact that a lot of things in our world have changed when it comes to women being seen as competent. But what hasn't changed in the workplace is women being allowed to be agentic. or goal directed. And so when women are ambitious or they have a big goal or they're proud of something they accomplished and they're, seen in a company newsletter or um, whatever, one of the things we find is that other women will tear them down. Other women will gossip about them. Think about the Real Housewives of whatever city you want to insert there. It's a show about women being mean to each other, and talking about outfits and money and this and that. And then, oh, let's get back together. It's this whole idea that there's this sisterhood out there. And I'm here to tell you that research is scary, sad too, is that women are not really a sisterhood unless we're hurting. So that's the tend and befriend research. I don't think women have learned how to believe and achieve. I think that we're missing that because of the cultural messages we get from the time we're very young about mean girls. That's just the way women are. That's just the way girls are. I went to the supermarket and saw a coffee creamer called Mean Girls. It's like, are you kidding me? I was looking at
I saw that in your book. I was like, that's a product? What the heck?
It's a real product. And there's nothing comparable for boys or men.
Right.
So women learn early because they're so verbally agile. They learn this jujitsu where they throw shade at little girls and other women. And a lot of times they do it just because that other woman, let's say her child got an A on a spelling bee, or maybe she's prettier, or, we just grow up with this idea that women, there's scarcity theory, that if she gets a piece of pie, I will not get a piece of pie. Men are socialized to believe if he gets pie, we're all going to get pie. I just have to go out there and work a little harder to get my pie. And just think about it on Sundays for football. You see men clearing the benches to have another man's back on the football field. And I turned to someone one day and said, I don't think I've ever seen on television or anywhere else a bench clearing to support another woman, maybe in the U.S. World Soccer team, but we don't grow up with messages that women. So my first point is that since we're so good at being communal, and we haven't yet made that progress, like 0 is what the research shows, in being agentic and celebrating women who have big goals and achieve them. Let's find a tribe of women who have our backs and with whom we feel safe. Psychological safety is not just at work, it's also in our lives. Do we have the safety to be proud of ourselves and to have big goals without being torn down by mothers and sisters-in-law and aunts and religions that don't want women to have a voice? Find that tribe. I have so much to say about this. And that's where you can be safe to set these big goals and know that you'll have a soft place to fall along the way. We have to do this together. And I came up with a word. So every woman should be in a mastermind group and I wrote a book called #IHaveYourBack that's available on my website that tells you how to start one of these groups. But I came up with a word that I realized is missing in our culture because ampliship and not ampliship, allyship and mentoring and sponsorship don't really have proof embedded into them. You can say you've done these things, but you don't have to prove you did them. And I kept hearing from powerful women I was coaching that they'd hear another woman on a panel talking about how she mentored and sponsored all these people. And they would go, she didn't do any of that. And then I think it was Adam Grant sent me research showing that they had to stop some research at a law firm because they had all these women saying they mentored other women. They couldn't find the mentees. And so I started to realize that it's easier to say you support other women than to actually have proof of it. So I came up with this word, ampliship, which means you celebrate the big ideas and the successes of other women in front of witnesses. Mm-hmm. My opinion is if there are no witnesses to this behavior, it didn't happen. It's just too easy to say you're part of a sisterhood. And I don't want any of this to be true, but I kept my mouth shut for 6 or 7 years while I looked at all the research because I said, I keep hearing about it. Now I want to understand why it's happening and what to do about it. But I do think there's a missing piece in the whole world of women helping other women accomplish their goals. I don't think there are enough witnesses to the behavior we're talking about. Some walk the walk, a lot don't. And last thing I'll say is I was on some big website. It might have been Catalyst, about how to promote yourself and at work and make sure people know what you did. And I remember this line that said, because after all, if you're not comfortable tooting your own horn, who else will? And I'm looking at this on the computer screaming, somebody else will. This has to be what women do for each other, is amplify each other's successes. If you hear a woman being interrupted in a meeting, make sure that her idea is said again by you and you give her credit. The Obama White House, this was so well known. They would agree ahead of time when they went into meetings whose ideas they were going to support and just say over and over, they had the right idea. Last thing I want to say about this, Miss Universe in December 2019, you can go look these clips up. Miss Jamaica won. But
I saw this.
When they
was this,
did you
what's
see
his
that?
name? Was Steve Harvey said the wrong person?
No,
the one?
no,
Not that one. That was a different
That
one.
was different.
Okay.
No, Miss Universe, I think it was Miss Trinidad and Tobago was up there and she was like going to be third or second. And they announced Miss Jamaica. So Miss Trinidad and Tobago ran in circles, shrieking and clapping her hands. And the voiceover is, you would think that she won, but no, her best friend, Miss Jamaica, just won.
Yeah, she was celebrating her.
She was celebrating her. And if you look, there were thousands and thousands and thousands of comments on that clip saying, why don't women do this?
I just
Why
got
don't they do this
goosebumps.
for
Why
each other?
don't they? I know. And that's interesting when I said you get a group of moms in the room and they could solve it. And you said, yes, as long as they're aligned in, that mindset that we're talking about. And I'm sure every woman listening is like nodding her head because we've all had those experiences, unfortunately, where another woman either took the idea or didn't have our back and the whole thing. Right. But there's an opportunity to change that. And I loved it. And I even saw one of your posts and I thought it was considering the level of success that you've cultivated over the years. And you said, sometimes you have that bad day and you said you have two masterminds. So is this based on this kind of I have your back kind of concept?
Yes.
Okay, so we need to pick up that book too, it looks like. I'm going to be getting that after.
It's an ebook, and I'm probably going to turn it into a huge book next year if the publisher I'm talking to really, because I just wanted to get it out so fast. Because I saw a real downhill movement where women were turning on each other more and more after, say, 2016, 2017. And I kept hearing about it in Dubai.
I thought it was getting better. I haven't been in corporate in so long. I thought it was improving. Oh, that I don't like hearing that.
It's
but anyway,
not.
That's a shame.
I just, I pushed that it's an ebook out. But here is what I want to cite the researcher Shelley Gable from the University of California, Santa Barbara. She has brilliant, and I mean brilliant research showing that when you share your big goal or dream with somebody else, there's only one right response that tells you that they have your back, that they want you to succeed, that they want to celebrate with you and help you savor the moments along the way. And that is this. Are they curious and enthusiastic when you say your dream or you say, this good thing just happened to me? Curious and enthusiastic. Wow, that's great. Tell me more. I want to hear all about it. Then they'll turn to someone who walks up. Hey, did you hear about her good news? Oh, tell it again. That is called an active, constructive responder. And that is the only way to know if a woman has your back. Is send a little trial balloon up, make up something fake, watch how she comments or doesn't comment, because there are three other ways to respond, like active destructive, passive destructive, and passive destructive. And they're all like either ignoring the news or saying something mean. But you must be surrounded deliberately by women who are going after other big goals. They don't want to live small lives. They don't want to live lives where they don't get noticed because they're afraid that no one will have their back. Because that's what happens, is you get thrown out of the tribe. You get thrown out of the tribe and you get shunned or ghosted if you're super successful. And we all need to have mastermind groups. So yes, I have two of them, and one's virtual. And well, actually both are virtual now. Because one of the things that we know that women do, that's the cruelest punishment across all cultures, is they throw you out of a tribe. They stop speaking to you. And this behavior is learned as little girls when we realize that our verbal abilities, our ability to say something a little bit snarky, or to leave somebody out, is the cruelest thing you can do to another
Yeah.
little girl or woman because of how we're wired, that tend
Yeah.
to befriend. We need other women. And that is what happens. And they often leave no fingerprints. And men often do not see or understand what's happening right in front of them.
Oh, 100%.
Uh-huh.
100% on that. Well, let's actually talk about something you also posted on Instagram. So your book is being shortlisted for the next Big Idea Club's upcoming picks. So that's like Adam Grant and Dan Pink, and there's this committee of,
Yeah.
esteemed authors.
Malcolm Gladwell,
Melton
Susan
Gladwell, Susan.
Cain.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was so
Yeah.
tell us more about this. And actually, I'd love to understand because I think we
Yeah.
learn from each other and you've written this book,
Yeah.
but tell us a little bit more about your story in terms of your goal setting process. You told me before we hit record that you didn't even know about this.
No, I
So
didn't know
this
about this
wasn't
book.
on your goals, your sort of, but so talk to us about what happened and
No.
then also your goal setting, how you approached it for the book.
Well, so I have known for years that the world still doesn't know goal setting theory. I flew to Malaysia in March and addressed 200 CEOs, and I always start at these big business gatherings. How many of you have started companies? All hands go up. How many of you use goal setting theory, Lock and Latham, to set your company's goals or your own goals? 0 hands go up. So I did a 9-hour workshop on that. And so I've known for 15 years, even though Creating Your Best Life really did a good job getting Lock and Latham out. There's only other one book that's ever done it. John Doerr's book, Measure What Matters. And he did it like in the introduction, like 10 years after that. So I realized there's such an opportunity. I want to streamline it. I want to get it in the hands of every manager, every athletic coach, every parent, every teenager. And so Wiley came along and said, we heard that you want to write this book. And they heard from another author, actually. And I was like, yeah, I do. So they gave me 4 months. 4 months. I slept on the floor of my office from December 27th to May 1st. I had one child get married in the middle of that and another one right after that.
Congrats.
But I was writing this in a hot rush because I knew, especially by February, I realized I was doing something unbelievably hard. And I called my husband up, who I sent to our beach house. I was like, I get why no one's done this. It's really hard because I went back to the 1880s and realized that every goal setting or productivity system that is in the world is like a zombie approach. They won't die, but they just keep getting passed down and they shouldn't be alive. We really do need goal setting theory. And then furthermore, I realized that women are not rewarded for the same behaviors in productivity systems that men are rewarded for. And so it is baked into our world and into our work lives about how to pursue goals based on these zombie theories. And women are getting shortchanged as our people are of color. So I wrote this book. It's all research based. And I knew when I turned it in that I'd done something extraordinary. And I don't say that lightly. And it's even embarrassing to admit it, but I knew I'd just done something that no one had ever done. I brought goal setting theory to light. I brought these 2 women, Mary Parker Follett and Lillian Gilbreth, to life. I'm giving them their due 100 years later. But then I'm saying it's a 21st century approach. And I have this bridge methodology that bridges the 20th century to the 21st, because now we have research from positive psychology that shows this amazing thing, which is all success in life is preceded by being happy first. So if you want to succeed at any goal, you have to start with, are you flourishing emotionally? Are you using your top character strengths every day in new and creative ways to achieve your goals? So we know this from all this new research, especially now that we're looking at genders. Does it work for women the same way it works for men? So no one's put their arms around that. I pulled it all together. I brought Lock and Latham, then I did the bridge methodology, and it's a foolproof way to set, pursue, and achieve any goal. I can guarantee it. I've tested it for years. And no, I didn't know this thing called the Next Big Idea Club existed until my publisher wrote and said, hey, congrats, you've been selected November must-read thought leader. I just remember slumping at my desk and saying, what? Malcolm Gladwell's going to judge this. So it's a huge honor. There are 8 winners for next year. And I think if people really feel as strongly as I do about the fact that the world deserves real science, that we have big tasks in front of us, huge goals, and everyone has a dream. And we all have the right to have the tools to do those hard things, whether it's at the societal level or the personal level. And I've had it. I've had it with these zombie goals. I've had it with law of attraction. I've had it with SMART goals. I've even had it with OKRs and KPIs because no one talks about how to accomplish these KPIs. So that's how I got the news. That's why I wrote the book. That's why it's been less than a year since I signed the contract. But the world was waiting for this book. And I have to believe something bigger than me was involved. It wasn't just me. I have to believe that if there is a power greater than me, the same one that helped me overcome bulimia, that I was a channel because I did this very hard thing 40 years ago, that people might believe me, even though as a woman, I'm going up against every stereotype against a woman talking about goal setting that exists. And I'm aware of what I'm up against, but I'm going to do my best to get the message out there.
And I felt it reading every page. Like I said, my curiosity meter was just like going off the chart. I'm like, how have I never heard of this billionaire female entrepreneur? Haven't I not heard of those two women who, by the way, just to connect the dots in case we didn't mention it, brought a human-centric approach to work, which obviously, and you mentioned Elon and Bezos and how they are not doing that. And, you know, it's time for this renaissance. I love that word. It's time for this revolution that you're bringing. And it's ideas that have been around, but need the light of day, like a spotlight put on them. And you've done that so beautifully in this book. There's so many things we could touch upon. Everyone needs to just literally just go buy the book. It's got all the exercises, worksheets at the end. You can like go through. There was a beautiful exercise of writing to your future self and then having that future self write back to you. I mean, just so many cool ways of visioning into your future, but then using the bridge approach that you just mentioned. But that all being said, is there anything that we didn't say today that you do want to make sure the women listening do take away from this conversation?
I think it's just super important for women to wake up as to what's happening around them when they do things like volunteer at work and do this emotional housework that all these economists have found doesn't get rewarded, but that does get rewarded when men do it. When we, for example, new research showing that when you come into a company and you're onboarding and getting to know people and going to these, happy hours, women can be seen as self-aggrandizing, men are not. And so I just think it's really important that we take a look at, are we getting the feedback that makes us want to live a bigger life or not? And what are we doing? Like we said, like you said, like I said, you can't keep what you don't give away. Whose woman's dreams are we privy to? And what are we doing to help them accomplish those big goals? We are at our best when we're nurturing and tending and befriending, but we can't just be at women's sides when they're hurting. We have to talk to them also when we're celebrating, and we have to know what their goals are too, because I'm of the belief that you don't know someone unless you know their deepest goals. And so find out what those are and do what you can to help them create a tribe of people who support them. And make sure that they know that mattering. Make sure people know that they matter to you. And that's something I've learned a lot about in recent years with the research on mattering. Not so much love, although that's important. Let people know they matter, because when they matter, they feel like they can walk through walls. And that's a gift you can give to anybody.
You're amazing. I am so excited for this book to be out in the world and for everyone to read it and pick up a copy and to share this interview with all their friends. Where should I direct them, Caroline, to connect on Instagram, your website? Where do you like? And we'll put it all in the show notes, which will be on your podcast player.
So all of the above, but at biggoalsbook.com, you can do a lot of bulk ordering and in particular book clubs. I want to Skype into book clubs for 15 minutes if they just get a carton of books and sit around and read it. And I will come and talk to all of you personally for free just to get this across. So go to biggoalsbook.com. I am findable in all those other places, but they all link from biggoalsbook.com or my name, carolinemiller.com. Thank you for asking. And thank you for reading the book. You really stand out to me.
I love the book. I'm so excited for this book. Like I said, everything was like how have I not heard of these incredible women? I feel inspired. I got new ideas. The billionaire who started the poker company, I literally was telling my husband, and I'm like, we have to start playing poker again. And here's why. I mean, you brought so many important things together, but so beautifully and also organized in such an easy to follow way. So you can go through, do the exercises. But I think having the historical context was really important. And I loved the way that you started it that way. You created the foundation and then you just built from there. So it's like,
it was worth it. All that work was worth it.
It motivates you. It motivates you because you're like, oh, it's possible. And this show, I think we share a desire. So I always talk about from when I started the show 6 years ago, I don't want a woman sitting around at 85, looking back at her life and going, oh gosh, I have so much regret. I didn't do that thing. I didn't include myself more. And so this is an invitation. And I think your book is a beautiful way to actually use the science to accomplish it.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. And I think we both do share that passion, especially when I learned about the diseases of despair. We're taking out women at midlife younger than our mothers and grandmothers. I mean, what? And how is it that so many women feel purposeless? If your show, if my book, if we can reach people and make them dream a little bit bigger and give them the real tools, not the, I want a red Mustang and it'll be out there tomorrow if I say it 10 more times, real tools to do hard things and link it to our values and our character strengths, then we'll have made the world a little bit better. And my task as an applied positive psychologist is to take all this research and apply it to real world problems so that the world flourishes a little bit more. This is my mitzvah. This is my gift to the world. And I really do hope it makes the difference that it needs to make.
You're a beautiful soul. You've written an incredible book. I'm going to read the title one more time and everyone can pick up a copy. It's called Big Goals, the Science of Setting Them, Achieving Them, and Creating Your Best Life. And that's what the show is an invitation for. So thank you for sharing your wisdom today. I wish you tremendous success with this book and come back on anytime to talk about any of these ideas. I love all of it, all the science. Come back. You're an open invitation. Thanks, Caroline.
Thank you very much.
Hey, friend, I have one request before we sign off today. If you've gained any value from any of the interviews that you've tuned into, would you take just 1 minute and leave a 5-star rating and review over on Apple Podcasts? It's actually how more women can find the show, and I want to continue growing a community of women who are loving themselves and living full on. So thank you for all of your support, and I look forward to being back with you next week. Bye for now.
This podcast is presented for entertainment and educational purposes only. Any information provided is not intended to be a substitute for medical, mental health, or other professional advice. Seek out your trusted healthcare provider or other qualified professional for all matters dealing with your health and well-being. Any opinions or information provided by a guest are their own and not those of Michele Lamoureux or the company.